gentlemen, welcome to the Indian Nation Station pregame show here live from Alexander Stadium. I'm A.J. Ganger with Bob Luby and Dwayne Bachman, legendary Piqua Indians football announcers, for another night of Piqua Indians football. Don't forget, tonight's game will be available on demand on our YouTube page starting on Monday afternoon and being shown on Channel 5 at 5:30 p.m. Don't forget as well to go on our Facebook page, like us, and go on our YouTube page as well. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you're able to get notified whenever a new video is posted. Tonight is the first Friday night. The battered helmet is back in Alexander Stadium in its rightful place. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to be back. We had a couple weeks off to rest, but back again. It's a little bit of inclement weather, but it ought to be an awfully good ball game. Homecoming is always very special, and I'm looking forward to it. Green Wave coming to town.
Bob?
Well, as Dwayne said, special night. Anytime you have a homecoming, it's special for a lot of kids, a lot of people, a lot of parents. And, we just hope the rain holds out. I hope the rain holds out, and we get a nice evening for the whole situation, game and activity. So looking forward to it.
All right, guys, let's take a look here at the Piqua Indians' remaining schedule for the rest of the year. We come in tonight 4-2, taking on Greenville here tonight at homecoming. One more road game this season. Next week we go to Butler, and then we close the year out with Tip City being senior night on the 19th, and the Troy Trojans coming in for the dreaded rivalry game against those dreaded Troy Trojans on October the 26th. Guys, we're in American North play now. Every game matters as opposed to getting a state champion, or not a state championship title, but if they do, to getting a conference championship.
Well, I think we have to be very, very honest, AJ. There are 4 games left, and there's no doubt in my mind that there is a possibility of winning all 4, because right now I think Greenville, Butler, and Tip City are all just about even in just about every department. Troy seems to be playing a little better maybe than the other 3, but in my judgment, this is the decider. Greenville, Butler, and Tip City, I think, are well within our reach. Troy might be a little tougher situation.
I think we'll get a pretty good indicator tonight. Butler plays Troy, and we'll find out, I think, how strong Butler is. They've been impressive, or somewhat impressive, I should say, throughout the year, had their ups and downs, but I think tonight will be a test for them, and see how they play with Troy. They are ahead of us, of course, in the rankings, and they're number 3 in our region. So, a lot of things have to happen before Piqua slides up a little bit. But, the league, I still think Troy has the momentum right now. Somebody's going to have to step up and knock them off.
I agree with you guys. Well, hopefully it's us at the end of the season. Let's take a look at last week's games around the G-Walk. We had Butler beating Greenville 37-21, Springboro 34, Beaver Creek 7. Springfield still the only undefeated team in the G-Walk at 35-7 win over Xenia. Wayne beat Centerville 35-21, Northmont 49-7 over Lebanon. Trotwood 62, West Carrollton 14, Fairborn 19, Stebbins 7. Troy beat Tip City 49-14, and one that looks like it came down to the very end was Fairmont 25, Miamisburg 24. So, guys, any shockers from last week? Talk a little bit about these games from the G-Walk last season.
That Fairmont Miamisburg game, I wouldn't say it's a shocker, but maybe just it's an attention getter, I guess, is the best way for me to put it. We knew Fairmont was good.
Yeah.
Felt like they were getting better each week, playing well. We also felt Miamisburg was very good. They had knocked off some people along the way, and just a solid football team. So whichever way this game went, it wouldn't have surprised me.
Right.
It doesn't surprise me it was that close. Like you said, could have gone right down to the last minute of the game, last seconds of the game. So it's been interesting to watch that game. And, of course, now we just found out, I've heard it on the news, that Miamisburg lost, it was 12 or 14 student athletes. They were suspended. And don't know how many of them were football players, but you have to wonder how many were and how that will affect the rest of their season.
Right. Yeah, you guys really have to look out, for stuff like that. It looks like when you look here, they don't have the final score up on the G-Walk, the final score in the box score, but with 10:31 left in the fourth, Fairmont ended up scoring a touchdown. The 2-point conversion was no good, so they had to have scored another touchdown towards the end because they were losing 21-19 at that point. So if G-Walk's website gets updated, we'd be able to see. I'm sure it came down to the nitty-gritty on that one.
Yeah.
Well, the game that catches my attention is Troy-Tip City. I think Troy 49, Tip City 14 tells me that Troy's awfully good, but it also tells me that Tip City is beatable, and that's why I think the Indians have a chance of winning 3 in a row and stand maybe in the playoff hunt.
You look at this Troy team, besides the one loss this season, I can't remember who they lost to. Miamisburg. Miamisburg always plays Troy tough. And even if I think it was a road game, too, in Miamisburg, it's always a tough place to go and play. It just seems like this Troy team is trying to do something special this season and make it pretty far in the playoffs.
Well, again, I think we have to be honest. All you have to do is look at the record and to see that the points that they're running up. This is a high-powered offense, in my judgment, that Troy brings to the field, and I think that's something that has to really catch the attention of opposing defensive coordinators, because Troy is in the end zone all the time, and defensively they're playing pretty well. So I think the biggest chore of anybody playing Troy has to be that of the defense, because if they can't keep the Troy Trojans out of the end zone, they're going to have to score a lot of points. I'm not so sure that's going to happen.
I think the key thing, in order to beat Troy, you're going to have to put a lot of points on the board, and that's difficult because they're pretty good defensively
That's
too.
Right.
I think turnovers is going to play a big key in a game beating Troy as well. You're going to have to get them to turn that ball over, because Jaden Colt Bishop, their running back, he probably doesn't put the ball on the ground very often. So that's one of those things where you get a couple good defense or a good defense against a good offense, you're going to have a really, really good game against Troy.
That should play into it. You're right.
All right, guys, now it's time we go ahead and look at last week's game as the Piqua Indians defeated the Sydney Yellow Jackets by a score 14-12. Guys, the battered helmet is now back in Alexander Stadium for the first time in over a year. Mick Karn was 8 of 13 passing, 123 yards, ran the ball 22 times, 141, and he also scored the only 2 touchdowns for the Indians on the day. Corrine Coleman had 10 carries for 47. McKeegan Coon, 8 carries for 26. Owen Toops had 6 catches for 95 yards. And Matt Blankenship, a big day defensively with 10 total tackles. Guys, what do you make of last week's game?
Well, I think first thing I make the point I would make is Andre Gordon is now playing for somebody at the post-high school level. That's the first observation. And without him at the quarter, is it Andre?
Andre Gordon is in West Virginia playing high school ball.
That's my first observation. He wasn't at the ball game last Friday night, and had he been the quarterback for the Sydney Yellow Jackets, that could have been an altogether different story, because he is quite an athlete, known for his basketball prowess. But had he been the quarterback, I tend to think that that could have been a more interesting game than it was, and at 14-12, it couldn't have been any more exciting than that.
Bob, I know you were at the game.
Yeah, I thought Piqua controlled the second half, did not control the first half, controlled the second half, even though they made some mistakes, put the ball on the ground a couple times, 2 fumbles. But they did some things well. Too many yards and penalties, had almost 100 yards or right around 100 yards in penalties.
Yeah, some of those penalties, too, they shouldn't have. I mean, you're the road team in a rivalry game. You're going to get those penalties called on you, but some of them are just too much.
I saw one that I've never seen called before when Micah Karn hurdled over a tackler. I didn't realize, and I've been around football quite a while, I didn't realize that's a penalized item.
So the only reason why that got penalized, and I was on the sideline and I talked to one of the coaches, it was because the player going for the tackle was not on the ground. So he was still up on his feet attempting a tackle. You're not allowed to hurdle somebody while they're attempting a tackle. Now, if they're on the ground, then you're allowed to hurdle over him. But we've seen Micah do it 3 or 4 times here this season here at home, so that's why I was confused with the call as well.
I think that's a good explanation explanation, and it makes a little sense. But at the time, I'm like Bob. I didn't realize it was a penalty, but where the defender was could have something to do with it. That would explain it, because nobody could explain it that I was listening to the ball game.
And that's not unlike Micah. I mean, he runs wild. He's all over the place,
Yeah.
through, over, around. He'll try anything to get an extra yard. That's just his nature. But it worked out okay for Piqua. I thought one of the big plays was the punt block by
Yes.
Brendan. I think it was Brendan Toops.
Brendan Toops, he blocked the punt, caught the ball after he blocked it, and ran it down. That set up the first touchdown of the game.
Yeah, he said he got through kind of untouched. He lined up on the center and just kind of went in. Nobody touched him and broke in. He thought it was kind of a quick kick.
Yeah, it was.
It was the quarterback.
They were trying to pooch it, and he just stepped back a couple steps, not very far, and that's, I think, what allowed him to get in there.
Yeah. Anyway, big play. Gave the Indians possession deep in Sydney territory, and I think Piqua beat a pretty good football team. I think Sydney's a pretty good team. Piqua made the plays they had to win the game, and overcame some things, most notably the fumbles, to be able to win the game.
Another thing I noticed too was that Sydney was very quick after Piqua would score to get another point. I mean, I think it was 2 plays after Piqua scored that first touchdown. Sydney ended up scoring to make it 7-6. Missed an extra point, and Piqua ended up scoring late in the game. Sydney would come back down the field, score again, miss a 2-point conversion. I believe they scored on a 4th down play too. We go back and watch the film, and that kid, that would have been a touchdown on Sundays with this toe tapping in the end zone there. I literally think they controlled the game all throughout. I talked to Coach Uhl after the game. I asked him, how do you call a game that's just such a defensive struggle like this? And he was honest. He said sometimes you have to be conservative, but not too conservative. If you look, we averaged 9.5 yards on a catch on a pass play. We averaged 5 yards running the ball. I mean, we ran 230 yards on the ground, 123 in the air, 353 total. If you look at the time of possession, we had 32 plus minutes time of possession. That's insane in a high school football game to be able to control and control a game the way that we controlled that game.
Well, it came down to 2 missed extra points.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, they're normal, the regular field goal or extra point person for Sydney's a girl.
Yeah.
And she was injured. She was out.
Oh, I didn't
so
know
they
that,
had
Bob.
to put whoever else is backing her up in, and didn't have a real good night there. So little things, they always say you do the little things well, the big things fall into place, and that was an example of that, I think.
Well, again, I also think we have to look at the fact that we had 2 turnovers and 7 penalties. Those are the kinds of things that come back to haunt you. The penalties, I think, are things that you're blaming the home team. I don't believe that for a minute, but by the same token, you can't have that many penalties and combine it with 2 turnovers and beat a real good team. We don't know how good Greenville is, but those are 2 and 7. That's 9. That's giving the other team the advantage.
When you look at the clock management too, we talk about the 32 minutes of possession. Coach Bill Neese there towards the end, when we were trying to bleed out the clock, he said there was, we needed to manage the clock a little bit better. They did get lucky. The punt got down at the 1 yard line. Defense was able to make a stand. I mean, that's one of the worst things he said in a coach's mind, to think when you have to go 99 yards with no timeouts with about a minute left in the game to try to win it. That's one of the worst things a coach could have to go through. And our defense played a really good game.
Oh, I think our defense did play well. I remember the time that Jim Drake used to broadcast games before Bob joined the broadcast team. Under the circumstance, he would have said, well, Sydney's got it 1st and 99. That's exactly what it was, and you could tell that it was going to take almost a freak play, because that was going to be Piqua's night. 14-12, they deserved it.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and move away from last week's game. Let's look at the Division III Region 12 rankings right now. Remember, the top 8 teams were to get into the playoffs, and if we look at it right now, if the season were to end today, Piqua would not be in the playoffs. We've got the 2 teams that beat us on top of the rankings in CJ and Trotwood, followed by Butler at number 3, Walpock at 4, Alter at 5, Baden at 6, Bishop Fenwick at 7, Mount Healthy at 8, Ross at 9, us at number 10, Salina at 11, Carroll at 12, Tip City at 13, Elida at 14, and Hughes at 15. And then at the very bottom there at 16, I added Greenville because that's who we're playing here tonight. Guys, the Indians are just on the outside looking in. What do we need to do to get in to the playoffs? I mean, obviously keep winning, but what else do we need to do to get into this playoff?
Hope for some help. Hope for some help from the teams in front of us. In other words, those teams have to lose.
Yeah.
CJ, of course, I think is going to stay where they are. They're not going to move too much. Now, that being said, they lost their quarterback, their starting quarterback, because of his eligibility to transfer thing. So he's sitting out the second half of the season. But the youngsters that played last week didn't do too badly, played pretty well. So I think that they'll miss him, but not terribly. Trotwood, their schedule indicates they're probably going to win at least 3 out of their last 4. They play Fairborn, Stebbins, Xenia, and Wayne. They finish up the season with Wayne. Wayne will be a challenge, but the other 3 I don't think should be in the way at all. Butler in 3rd place. Their schedule is a little tougher now than it was in the first half of the season. Troy tonight, us next week, then Sydney, then Tip. Depending on what they do, if we could beat Butler, that would be a huge get for Piqua.
Yeah.
Piqua's problem's been the people they've beaten haven't won many games.
Yeah. What's the combined record right now with Piqua teams that we played?
Piqua's opponents are 21-21.
Wow.
And 6 of those 21 wins belong to one team, Chaminade. So, the rest of the teams haven't done us a whole lot of good, unfortunately.
Well, Bob, you mentioned that Lima Senior High. I don't know if I think they've won 1 game.
Right.
Meadowdale, we don't even know who they're playing.
They've won 1 or 2.
And so,
but one of them was a club team.
Yeah, that
the
doesn't
club
count.
team.
So
Yeah.
well, you're right, Bob. It's who are the people we beat. And the fact of the matter is, the people we beat have not had much success.
And the thing that stinks too is when you look at it, now we're getting ready to beat up on everybody in the American North, and everyone else is going to beat up on everybody else. So those points kind of even out. So we need those teams up at top, Healthy and Ross and Bishop Fenwick to just drop a game or 2.
Need some help. That's what I said. You need Alters in there at number 5.
They're only lost to Kettering.
Yeah,
now
they'll
Fairmont.
finish the season with Chaminade. That may be, just because it's a rivalry, may be a hotly contested game. I'm not sure about some of these other Cincinnati Catholic League schools, the Badens, the McNicholas, Purcell Marion. I'm not sure how strong they are. Bishop Fenwick. Chaminade has Bishop Fenwick tonight, so their Bishop Fenwick is 7. A loss by Bishop Fenwick may drop them a little bit. So, a lot of things can happen. I think Piqua has time yet, but they're going to have to play very well for the last 4 games of the season.
And when you look at the list of 15 that you've got here, AJ, look at that 4-2 and 3-3. That tells me that there are still some places to be earned on that playoff list. If you had the top 6 that were 6-0, I'd say you're wasting your time. But no, with 4-2 and 3-3, and look at Elida 2-4.
Yeah.
And so it tells me that there's some parity around, and that our 4-2 record now looks as good as a lot of teams, even though we're in 10th place. Like Bob says, we got to have some help. The biggest help we can have is tonight and next Friday night.
I agree with you guys 100%. Let's move on in now to Week 7 GWalk games as we look ahead here tonight. Troy taking on Butler, 5-1 against 4-2. That's a road game for Troy. Sydney is at Tip City. That's a 3-3 and 3-3 matchup. Trotwood is at Fairborn. Xenia plays Stebbins at home. West Carrollton goes to Fairmont. Springfield is at Northmont. Wayne 4-2. Beaver Creek 1-5. Centerville 0-6 at Lebanon. Miamisburg 5-1 at Springboro, and we'll get into our game here tonight as we move forward. Guys, one bold prediction, since my other one did come to fruition, obviously, because Dwayne Bachman has been giving me crap about it since we went on the air, since I've talked to him this week. Northmont tonight at home is going to beat Springfield, but it's going to be close.
Well, again, I think it's going to be a heck of a ball game.
Yeah.
A little closer game than your last prediction, where you predicted Centerville would beat Springfield. It was 53-7.
But he liked the Centerville band. He thought.
Oh, the
he
band!
said the band
I thought the band really won the show there,
The band
guys.
was awfully good.
And their marbles team is awfully good
Yeah,
too. I think
yeah.
AJ got that confused. But I think that'll be a heck of a ball game at Northmont. Maybe gives them a little bit of edge. I tend to think if I had to pick one, I'd pick Springfield. But Northmont winning that and Tony Broering at the helm wouldn't surprise me a bit. What do you think, Bob?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a tough one because Northmont look like, they're the team to beat in the area, the big Division I team. But I think they lost to Wayne, didn't they?
Yes.
I believe they did.
And Wayne, this is not a typical Wayne team. Wayne, I don't want to say they're down, but they've moved a notch or two below the level they usually play at. So I was surprised that Wayne beat Northmont.
Mm-hmm.
So you never, to me, I guess what I'm saying is you never know which Northmont team's going to show up. A good performance by Northmont tonight could beat Springfield. But I'm going to think that Springfield's going to be 7-0 when this night's over.
I think the first two games you've got on your list are the ones that we're all going to talk about tomorrow morning. And that's Troy Butler, Sydney Tip City, because we're going to find out a little bit more about Troy. We're going to find out a little more about Butler. Going to find out a little bit more about Tip City. Those two games, in my judgment, are basically going to be the ones that I'm going to pay the most attention to, because they are definitely the ones that have a future as far as the Indians are, as far as going into the football playoffs.
Well, let me ask you this. When was the last time you've seen Centerville at 0-6 at this point?
It's been a long time.
I can't even remember. I can't even remember. I don't know if they've ever been. Have they ever been 0-6?
I don't think they've ever have been.
No. I mean, that's a shocker. And they have Lebanon's 3-3. I'm not sure how good. I don't think Lebanon's dynamite by any means. But when you're 0-6. Now, that being said, I've been told or read that Centerville plays a freshman quarterback.
Oh.
And when you play a freshman quarterback in this league, or in any league, he's going to struggle just because he's a freshman. So that may be in part why they're struggling. But, again, that'll pay off for them down the road in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping that as I looked at Troy's schedule that I would see Trotwood-Madison on there.
Nope.
Because that would have really added to the mix. They don't play Trotwood-Madison, so that doesn't figure in. But had they played Trotwood-Madison, that would have really given you an idea of how tough the Trojans are.
Yeah, I agree with you guys 100% because, like I said, Troy looks like a tough team on paper. Their record shows that they're a tough team, but really, how tough are they? I think we're going to find out tonight when they go to Butler to take on the Aviators there. A quick look here at the American North standings after 1 week of American North play. Troy, Butler, and us, Piqua, at the top three. Greenville, Sydney, Tip City, bottom three. Those teams are 3-3. Troy, the only 5-1 team. Butler's 4-2, and we are 4-2 as well. The other teams are 500, sitting at 3-3. So a tight race. The next few weeks, I think we're going to start to funnel out who the real teams are, who the fake teams are, and try to figure out who we're going to have. Obviously, I literally think the Troy-Piqua game at the end of the year is going to be an American North Conference Championship game.
Oh, I think you're probably right. I still think that the game with Butler is going to basically be the key to whether or not that is going to be the biggest game of the GWAC North. If we can't beat Butler, then it's going to be less appropriate to call it a championship game, because Troy will have won the trophy.
Bob?
Can't disagree with that. I agree also. I think Troy is the team to catch, and Butler, we'll find out again more about them tonight.
All right, guys, now it's time to talk about the game happening here tonight. Greenville is coming into the night looking to spoil the Indians' homecoming and to get above 500 on the year. On the flip side, the Indians are looking to make it 2 in a row and stay unbeaten here at Alexander Stadium. Gentlemen, could this be our trap game tonight against Greenville, and what are the keys to victory for the Indians?
Well, Bob always handles keys to the game better than I do, and he's taken a long look at it. Let's ask him to give us his viewpoint, because I would certainly think that he's right on it. Always has been.
Well, every now and then I get it right, Dwayne.
I don't know
but I think one of the keys for Piqua will be to get the defense off the field and keep the offense on the field. You don't want your defense out there playing defense all the time, and I think the Indian offense has to be more involved and get more opportunities.
Another 33 minutes of time possession would be nice.
Right. I think that's key. Secondly, I think Piqua will have to eliminate any big plays by the Greenville special teams. Punt returns, kickoff returns. Greenville has a couple pretty good skilled people. And you don't want those guys handling the football too much because they can hurt you.
Yeah.
They can break away and pull away. And Piqua struggled sometimes in coverage, especially on kickoffs. So I think it's going to be critical tonight that the Indians control the special team phase of this whole situation.
I think it's going to come down to turnovers and penalties in AJ, in my judgment. And again, those are the things on the negative side, but those are the things that oftentimes make the difference. If Piqua can avoid some of those penalties and maybe cut down on the turnovers, although 2 isn't anything too drastic, I think we're going to win this ball game. I think it's going to be pretty close.
I think we're going to have to play as good a defense as we have all season long. I think this is one of Bill Neese's best defenses that he's ever coached. Yeah, he's a defensive-minded guy. You know, he loves when you're getting out there in a defense and hitting people. I also think, like Bob said, we're going to have to control the game again. If we can control the game the same way we did last week and limit turnovers and penalties with our offense, I really think this could be a huge game for the Indians here tonight. I mean, points-wise, 33 minutes of time possession will be nice again for the Indians, but also putting up 40, 50 points on a Greenville team would also be very nice as well.
And I think Greenville's a better offensive team than they are a defensive team. Now, again, goes back to Butler. How good is Butler? Greenville put 21 points on the board against Butler. They didn't win the ball game, but still, you put 21 points on the board against a pretty good football team.
Yeah.
To me, that says something. They've lost some big-time games or big games by big-time scores. 2 of their victories have been against some of the poor teams in the area. Eaton, Stebbins, West Carrollton. They beat
West Carrollton was an overtime game.
Yeah, by a point.
Yeah.
By a point in overtime. So Greenville always scares me, be honest with you. Dwayne and I have been doing this for quite a while, and I remember a few times driving back from Greenville, and we're just crying the blues because of the way we played.
That's exactly
Said,
right.
oh, my, we shouldn't have lost that game. Greenville made a couple plays to win it, et cetera, et cetera. So I respect Greenville, and I think another thing I think we have to look at, if Greenville has a rival, wouldn't it be Piqua? Because who else in the league geographically is close to Greenville? There's nobody.
I think you're right, Bob. In fact, Greenville's always played Piqua tough, and I remember those times we've driven back from Greenville wondering, why did we lose? How did we lose? And neither one of us had the answer. But Greenville, their kids are going to be up. I talked to one of the coaches early in the week, and he said, don't be misled by the 3-3 record. They're a better ball club than that. That scares me a little bit. They haven't beat too many of the state powers, but by the same token, this coach seemed to think that we've got to be very, very careful. And I know our coaches never look beyond this week, but I think it could be a ball game.
AJ, respect everyone.
Yeah, you can never take any opponent for granted. You really have to go out there and play like everybody's 10-0. All right, guys, that's all the time that we have here for tonight on the Indian Nation Station pregame show here from Alexander Stadium, Perk Field. Stay tuned for the game coming up right next here on the Indian Nation Station, Piqua Channel 5. It's your home for Piqua Athletics. The next telecast of Piqua Indians football will be on Friday night, October the 19th, as Tip City comes to town. Bob Luby and I will have the call for that, as Dwayne Bachman will be going on vacation somewhere, hopefully not to Centerville, because they're 0-6. For Bob Luby, Dwayne Bachman, I'm AJ Ganger saying good night and go Indians.